Hello and welcome to edumate.tv. I'm CHETAN Sharma. We learn to live and live to learn in what has turned out to be an unprecedented situation, an unprecedented pandemic, with history being written across the geography of Mother Earth. And a minor virus has created a major catastrophe, making each and every one of us rewind, rethink, re-strategize, reformat, restructure before we rebuild a new life, a new education life, a new norm. In the field of higher education, they say, the complex issues that are up, particularly post-COVID and the NEP, are something which are unforeseen for several. In fact, the complexities are such that the challenges which are emerging often find weak solutions. And the weaker aspect is the inability to create opportunities. To do that, you require a strong past in terms of experience and knowledge, and more importantly, a very flexible, adept mind to be able to anticipate the future and mitigate the challenges. That's why we have a very wise Chancellor. Well, today we have a very special guest with us, Professor Raghuvir Singh, joining us from the Teerthankar University at Moradabad in Uttar Pradesh. Thank you for joining us, sir. What a pleasure to talk to you today. What have been your understanding, your experiences, your challenges since March 2020?
I, in my lifetime, never faced this kind of a sudden disruption. And frankly, we were not prepared for this kind of, unprecedented situation. And rather, nobody predicted it. So though technology has been, doing rounds for quite some time, but most of us neglected it because we thought it's not much use. Education can only be, delivered through a physical contact. That was the thinking till then. Technology as such was more important for self-learners. Ever since the closures were disclosed in the country, for about 10 days we were dumbstruck, let me tell you, what to do. And then when we looked back and also, predicted that it's not going to go any soon. And thereafter, we started getting together. So we started thinking about getting the technology and use. The first thing we took a decision was, let's upload all our study material, all our videos, and all our slides on our website. This was the first thing we did. And then started planning our, using platforms, delivering our lectures. Now, we were quite skeptical to begin with it, but within a week's time, we realized that, it would work in the given situation because everyone has accepted the reality and we all thought there is no alternative to it. The only survivor to us is the technology. The next came is what to do now. We delivered it, the question of examination. How do we assess them? So using those very platforms, we actually started making first some internal assessments for the sake of experiment, right? And we succeeded in that. So we had two formats for that. One is MCQs, we called multiple choice questions, and another one was, personal interviews with the group of faculty. Now, those personal interviews, in fact, brought a lot of changes in the students. In subsequent weeks, the companies started interviewing our students online. So in a way, they were prepared to face camera. Otherwise, they were very shy of camera.
They say the hallmark, the first step of the hallmark of a great leader is to A, recognize that there's a problem.
Yes,
B,
true.
admit one's limitations. And
Yes.
it's only then that you can try and find solutions.
That's correct.
I salute you for in fact fulfilling all those hallmarks which are required for great leadership. These two are very integral qualities also what espouses the new education policy of this country. One very interesting part of the policy is the desire to take or to reignite India's past, the heritage, the Gurukul system, of education and try and merge it with the futuristic technology, to bring out, a solid leverage on both accounts. Now, when I hear the name of your university, it tells me immediately that there is already a sense of alignment. So I'd like to understand your mission and how is it aligned, in detail with the NEP.
If you look at various provisions of NEP, the shift is from memorization to critical thinking. The purpose of education, way back, great scientist Einstein said, the purpose of education is to develop thinking. Another one, Simon also said that the education should be able to develop thinking and develop ability to do. And these both components were missing. The only choice of method of teaching learning is lecturing. Lecturing method has limitations. It's a good tool to share information to a large audience, but it can't involve students. You rightly said Gurukul system. When you look back at Gurukul systems were very unique. Small batch size, taking care of every child, hand holding them, guiding them, making to do things, and then correcting them. Now, this is not possible in a large batch of 50, 60 students. So that was one aspect. Okay, and since there were few pockets where education excelled in so-called institutions of eminence, and that all were government funded, we came very, very late into realizing that private participation also have an equal chance. So the private education came quite late in our country. So therefore we could not spread our tentacles. We couldn't take education to the last mile, and it became so-called elitist. But beyond that, there is something called intelligence.
I'm going to take this one step further. Whatever you point out is absolutely beautiful, well taken, and very insightful. From rote learning to critical thinking, what you mentioned. I'm going to shift this now to another level of awakening, and I'm going to come back to the point I was trying to make of the great sage Mahaveer, who was enlightened. Of course, it requires a lot of substance to get enlightened. But how do you manage to put a person on the path of enlightenment at the early years? Because all of us realize, as we get older, there's so many things we should have done in a particular way, which would make us at least more awakened and more mindful. So is there some practice that you follow at the Teerthankar Mahaveer University?
A leader, irrespective of sector in which he or she is, has three important skills: conceptual skill, human skill, and technical skill. As you grow higher and higher up the rank, the requirement of particular skill changes. So if you are at the top, you should have a highest conceptual skills. Technical skills you don't require because you are not someone who is executing. Are you able to conceptualize? That means establish interrelationships. Are you able to visualize the future? So a leader has to have that conceptualization skills, and then he should have to understand how education is delivered. Higher education, unlike secondary and primary education, do not have a trained manpower. When I entered in this profession, soon after post-graduation, I was pushed to the classroom. I had no idea how education is delivered. Whatever I learned over a period of time. It took almost about 25 years for me to realize what I'm supposed to do, how education is supposed to be delivered.
Absolutely. So what you tell me, I infer two things. A, there's a huge opportunity for online training and a huge need for it.
Yes.
Because every opportunity stems from a need. And the second thing what you're telling me is the need to have a higher employability quotient and focus while imparting education. And that's really one of our purposes at edumate.tv. We say educate to employ.
That's
it may be limiting, but it's very important at that age and stage of life. So what are you doing on that front?
We actually recognize, that is a tripod of educational objectives. One of the leg of the tripod is employability and entrepreneurship. Second one is research, and third one is teaching. We, being a private self-financed institution, cannot afford to have a research focus because it takes a long time and requires heavy investment. Teaching alone, where you are able to, create those degree holders, is not going to help us. So we, deliberately chosen to be an employability enhanced institution. That means try and create those students who have a higher potential for employability. Thereafter, as I was discussing earlier, we looked at those three important, domains of learning. The first one was cognitive, second was affective, and third was psychomotor. How are you going to enhance the students' IQ? That is, ability to have higher thinking order. Rather than only understanding, I would like to emphasize on applying the concepts, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. How do I do it? I can't do it unless otherwise I have my pedagogy changed. I have to predetermine what outcomes am I expecting from a given program. To my surprise, or maybe to your surprise, education is the only sector which has no predetermined outcomes. So much of effort, resources are put into it. Do we in our real life undertake any activity without predetermined outcomes? No. A lot of people might come and say, okay, there is a predetermined outcomes. People get degree, people get employment. That's not a predetermined outcome. Predetermined outcome has to be in terms of learning. Now, to achieve this, we created, for example, cognitive, higher order thinking. I have myself trained almost about 700 faculty members of my own university on how the education has to be delivered in the classroom, and followed that by ITW, that we call intensive teaching workshops, where we created the self-help groups of senior people. They would assure that every faculty undergoes series of presentations in the classroom before she is allowed in the classroom. That's point number one. Right? So we assure that faculty involves our student. We call that experiential learning. That involvement can happen in the classroom. It can happen outside the classroom. Second one, the affective domain, which I talked about. We created a department called Center for Learning and Development. Okay. Now that center responsibility was to deliver all that soft skills part or people skills part in our students. We have a 20 faculty strong center that delivers. We have almost about 14,000 students, and we deliver to every student these soft skills. And third one, we call it the hard skill or psychomotor. We have actually developed, I call it basically employability index enhancement through matrices and grids. So pick up those critical skills. Then we looked at whether we have a potential in our university to deliver those skills. If not, then how do we do it? Do we collaborate it? Do we hire people? Do we have to create extra resources or not? Next, again, I asked my principals to develop another grid wherein the, competence of my faculty and interest of the faculty is determined, so that at the end of the program of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, whatever the program period is, my students actually go out of the university with at least 2 to 3 employability skills.
The other hallmark I see of a great leader is to lead from the front, and it's quite amazing how you've done that in such a short period of time, and just the passion with which you say that you've trained 700 teachers yourself lays testimony to that effort. So I salute you for that. The other interesting thing which I inferred from your conversation was those several quotients that you brought out, and that makes me more interested in knowing a little bit about you. Because your logical interpretation of that tells me that your career itself would have been quite a learning curve.
It has been quite a learning curve. I've been on upswing. I belong to a farmer's family. Right? Whatever I did was done hard way, like a farmer. Right? I had my engineering education and I taught for 2 years in education. So the logical mind comes from there. Now I realized that education was no use unless one able to, achieve that ability to perform something. And when I was at, Manipal University, Jaipur, when I was heading the business school, I wanted to change the way education was being delivered. And for that, as a leader, you have to understand the education itself. So I read quite a lot. I'm so much interested in reading the great education philosophers, various learning theories, various grades, various methods, everything. I want to learn all about that so that I can use that in whatever way, depending upon the context. It's not taking straight out of there and be blinded and implement and then fail. No, you got to actually chip it. You got to really mold it and then see what fits you.
Well, you've ticked another box of great leadership, and that is the quest to continue to progress and learn. So you've obviously ticked all the boxes. So I congratulate you for that.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to come back to one question, on something you mentioned a little while earlier, because we're getting towards the concluding part of this conversation, and that is when you talked about the shift to online education. Now, I also noticed that, that you're based in Moradabad, which isn't blessed with the best digital connectivity, around your area. And to my mind, in my conversations with most of the education leaders, one of the biggest, the most potent threats of a digital divide looms large on us. So what has been your experience on that front?
There was a problem of broadband, no doubt about it. I asked my principals, please connect with every student, connect with every faculty. It may not be possible for me to, touch base with everyone, but I asked them to connect with everybody so that, they know that there is a strong support from behind and there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of zeal in all of us to make this thing happen. There has not been much complained about, at least in our area, about the, connectivity issues. So that when we were having examination, there were some complaints. We said, don't worry about it. We will provide you another chance.
It takes all elements to make a democracy, Professor Raghuvir.
Yes. Yeah, true.
This conversation, Professor Singh, has been truly inspiring. And I want to leverage that inspiration and request you to give a spot of advice for four very critical pillars of this education ecosphere, which have been, very intensely impacted by COVID. A, your fellow Vice Chancellor. B, the student. C, the teacher. And fourth, the parent. What would be your advice to them? How to proceed now in this environment?
I would say let's look at what is our role as a leader, academic leaders. For me, there are 4 or 5 most important roles of academic leader. First one is devising and assuring future positioning of your university. That's visioning and looking for a roadmap of university. Any institutions cannot go directionless. You have to determine a direction. You have to determine your own position and relentlessly have a pursuit of that. You are more likely to do better, not only your own university, even for the general society. Enhance education quality. So put a strategy in place. How do we enhance education quality? Enhance your visibility across all media, across all possible ways. Because if you enhance visibility, you are more likely to attract talented students, talented faculty, and have a good, connectivity across. Develop a great team and happiness among them, and ultimately students' satisfaction. And last one, I say, create an enabling and culture of excellence. These are the 5 things. This is as far as my fellow leaders are concerned. Yeah, for my faculty teachers. Follow that process we call learn, unlearn, and relearn. Continue relentlessly on the path of learning. And of course, other aspects are you go to research. There is today's world, there is no place if you cannot research. I'm not saying that you're going to be a great researcher, but you should have that mind of a researcher. See, select a track. While mastering a track, have understanding of other tracks also. Don't forget about them. And then for my students, I say put massive efforts if you really want to learn something. Learning doesn't come easy. Have a focus, determine for yourself what is that you want to be. What is that you want to be, not what you want to become. There is a difference between the two. What you want to become and what you want to be. So what happens when you become engineer? Is that over? No. So one need to understand what he or she wants to be. And to be that, got to be very focused, put massive efforts, enjoy life as usual you enjoy. Don't be what we call a copycat, a rote learner. Finally, the parent approach. Parents have to, in this age of technology, have to have a watch on their children. Where are they going and what are they doing? If they can't guide them more, just have that watch.
You've been a truly inspiring leader and an interviewee. This conversation has educated me, and I'm sure it will educate our viewers multifold. I often end off, with an alliteration so that our viewers can easily structure their key takeaways. My conversations with you would definitely reveal one letter, that is F. F for frankness, which is the recognition of a great leader. The second F would definitely be further. Your further means your quest for continuous learning and evolving and improving yourself, which is quite brilliant. The third is the word front. The third F is front. Whatever I hear from you tells me that you have led from the front, which is again a hallmark of a great leader. The fourth F would be flexibility. The way you changed tact when you encountered a problem, and you made yourself adept to be able to switch, keeping your goal in mind, switch your ability, your path, your tactic to reach that goal. Is quite marvelous. And the final one is being futuristic. It's just a sense of progression which seems to be so steeped in your quality of leadership that makes you truly, Professor Raghuvir Singh, a very wise chancellor.
I really salute you, your efforts. It's not just helping two of us, it's helping the broader audience. And that's the great work which you are doing. And I wish that this goes much beyond what we are doing today for the greater good of the society.